And we are now live.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I'd like to start. This meeting of Ajax Council is being held electronically and live streamed on the town's website. All members of council in attendance are participating by audio and video teleconference, and town staff are available throughout the meeting if council members have any questions on the agenda. For members of the public watching from home, please bear with us if we encounter any technical difficulties throughout the meeting. I'll now call the meeting to order. I'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. Begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas. More specifically, the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. This land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations, Truth and Reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Does any member of council have any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Oh, hearing, seeing none. Moving on to delegations of presentation. We have one delegation. Mr. Clerk, is Mr. Soriano here?
Yes, he is.
Okay. Mr. Soriano, when you're ready, please go ahead. You'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, and good morning to Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Alexander Soriano, and I'm a partner with the law firm of Aird & Burles. I'm appearing today on behalf of my client, Village Creek Developments Incorporated, who are the owners of 520 Rosslyn Street, or Rosslyn Road West, I should say. I want to thank you firstly for the opportunity to speak to you this morning about proposed bylaw 66-2022, which is before you this morning. Now, this is a bylaw that seeks to name a private road on Village Creek's property. And for the reasons I will be explaining momentarily, Village Creek is asking that council not adopt this bylaw in its current form. Now, by way of a brief background, Village Creek is redeveloping 520 Rossland with 6 new luxury townhouse properties, each backing onto a naturalized ravine leading to the Duffins Creek. Now, the development was approved by the town back in December 2021 and is moving towards construction. Now, these new houses will all take their frontage off a new U-shaped private road that connects to Rossland. This private road, or lane, is intended to be one-way only and will serve exclusively to give the 6 new homeowners and their guests access to their properties. The private road will remain privately owned and maintained as a common element amongst these new homeowners. Now, the background and this description, I think, is important context for when we get into a discussion about the proposed name for the lane, because it gives us an understanding of the truly private nature of this road and its limited use by the future owners of the new development. Now, Village Creek has consistently proposed that the name of this new private lane or private road be Manhattan Place. Now, although most associated with the location in New York, the name Manhattan actually has origins in the First Nation language of the Lenape people of the northeastern United States and Canada, whose word Mannahatta means hilly island or place where we gather timber for bows and arrows. Now, as an indigenously owned company, Village Creek's president and CEO, Richard Rondeau, and his family are Métis. The First Nations history of the proposed laneway name is an important context and a way to honor this Indigenous heritage. So as a result, the proposal to name the new private road Manhattan Place has been a consistent feature of the new development, and its significance was widely communicated. The name Manhattan Place was actually accepted by town and regional staff. On September 26th of this past year, only less than 2 months ago, Village Creek received confirmation from town planning staff that Durham Region had indicated had no issues with the name Manhattan Place after their review. Now, despite this broad acceptance of the Manhattan Place name and the reasons for it, the bylaw before you is proposing to name the private road Tidmarsh Lane. Now, we understand that this alternative name is based on the town's long-standing policy of naming public highways and streets on personnel serving on the battleship HMS Ajax. Now, this is reflected in the town's own street naming bylaw for public roads, and it doesn't apply to the private lane that's being proposed here. Now, even though the street naming bylaw does not apply to Village Creek's new road, as a privately owned street, it is important to note that the naming convention is not an absolute requirement. Rather, the street naming bylaw itself specifically notes in Section 3 that, and I quote, "New names for streets may be compiled from other sources," end quote. And the town has in the past expanded its street names to honor other features of the Battle of River Plate. Now, I want to be clear that Village Creek are not questioning the importance of the naming policy. Rather, they, like many of us, recognize its success in preserving elements of Ajax's World War II heritage. It has been so successful, in fact, that an important milestone was reached just last March, I should say, when this council voted to change Langdorf Drive's name, which is named after a German ship, to be renamed as Croker Drive. Now, A.J. Croker was the last remaining veteran on the town's street naming reserve list who lost his life during the Battle of River Plate. So the completion of this memorial exercise presents new opportunities for Ajax to look to other parts of its history when naming new streets. Now, interestingly, Ajax's own diversity and engagement plan from 2010, so almost 12 years ago, included a summary of its public stakeholder and engagement consultations, which included a recommendation that a review of the street naming policy that includes recognition of the contributions made by other diverse populations should be undertaken. That's in section 2.3, page 30 of that community engagement plan. And this is something that, importantly, I think a number of you yourself, members of council here, have already recognized in some of the debates that occurred over the renaming of the Graf Spee and Langdorf Drive. In particular, during a special council meeting in July of in 2020, and a little bit later in November of 2020, in the debates over the Graf Spee and the Langdorf Drive streets, some of you sitting here today expressed the need to relook at Ajax's naming policy and open it up to recognize more diverse aspects of the town and region's history, in particular its Indigenous history. And here, with Village Creek's private street, this is an opportunity to work with an Indigenous landowner to help achieve that significant goal. Lastly, I want to raise a significant issue of process with the bylaw that is currently proposed before you. The bylaw as drafted would impose the Tidmarsh Lane name on my client's private lands without any further dialogue or discussion. Now, this is contrary to the process that has been followed in other instances where the town's street naming decisions have affected landowners. In fact, Section 7 of Ajax's street naming bylaw sets out that an open house process for consultation with affected residents is to occur every time council decides to change a street name. Now, the process was followed by this council in both the recent Graf Spee and Langsdorff examples, and the motions initiating those name-changing decisions directed the Director of Planning and Development Services to engage with affected residents and report back to council with their comments. Now, the decision before you is one that affects a private lane on privately owned land, and that will be used almost exclusively by the private homeowners of this site. Village Creek is by any definition here an affected landowner. We are not aware of other examples where the town has expressly exercised its powers under Section 48.
You're well over your time. You'll have to wrap up, please.
Okay, I will. Thank you, sir. So just in summation, sir, we would ask that the town use this opportunity to not adopt the bylaw in its current form, but rather to engage with Village Creek in a further discussion about the naming opportunity that this lane presents, this private lane that serves 6 houses, and to rather direct staff to have further discussions with Village Creek on the opportunity presented over the naming of the private lane. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Does any member of council have any questions on the delegation? Councilor Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair to the delegate, you have this developer has other properties across Ontario, presumably, correct?
Through the chair, yes, Village Creek does have other developments throughout the GTA.
And presumably there's other private lanes with those developments, correct?
I'm not aware of the details of those other developments, but I
guess the question, yeah, that's fair. The question I'm asking is, I mean, are all like, is there consistency that all these private, any private lanes that, are owned, are they all named after First Nations, Indigenous? Like, is it all reflective of that history? Because if it's consistent, then like, I understand that, right? It's just like our consistency is important to us, your consistency is important to you guys, right? But if it's not consistent, then it's like, I have a hard time sympathizing with the idea that, that we should be acknowledging the Indigenous history, in this specific case, but not the other ones. So just I was wondering if you could answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's a very good question, Councillor Lee. One site that I'm aware of where Indigenous symbolism and history was engaged is at the Hummingbird Lane. I believe it's called the Hummingbird site. It's another one that Village Creek has undertaken. In terms of the others, I don't have the details, but what I can say is this site here does present an opportunity for the town and for the developer to recognize its Indigenous heritage and culture. And again, we are asking for the opportunity to continue that discussion with city staff to make sure that this is something that is beneficial to both the town and the private owners of the lane, and something that can be an opportunity that can be used here to truly look at an acknowledgement again of the Indigenous identity of both this company and its owner.
And don't get me wrong, that is an important ideal for me and Councillor Bauer when we brought this up previously, of like we should be acknowledging other things. But I also believe in waiting for the proper time and place to have that discussion, and time and place being when council ultimately decides to change the street naming policy, right? To your point, we did change Langsdorff, but we changed it to another sailor based on the policy. Chair, is it possible to direct questions to staff in this case, or just only delegations?
At this point, it's delegations. We'll have an opportunity to discuss.
Very good. Then I have no further questions. Thank you again for your impassioned plea, and thank you for your time. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. Does any other member of council have any questions to the delegation? Councilor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. Good morning, Mr. Siriani. Thank you for your delegation. I think in part of your presentation, you said the town had accepted this request previously. Is that true?
Through the chair, yes, Councillor Bauer. So Village Creek had submitted the name request to the town through planning staff. Mr. Simpson had forwarded that to the region, and the region, we received correspondence confirming that the region had no concerns. The region does its check and ensures that there are no conflicts with the name. They don't sound similar to other names within the region for safety purposes, and so had signed off on that. Our understanding is that they had signed off on the Manhattan Place name, and so with that, from the staff level, it's my client's understanding that the name was accepted.
So that sounds to me it was accepted at the region, but not necessarily at the town. That would be my understanding as you explained it just now.
Again, through the chair to you, Councillor Bauer, that the region, it was forwarded by staff to the region for that further step of approval. With respect to the staff level, our understanding is that staff had expressed in that same correspondence confirming that the region had no concerns, that they similarly did not see any issues with moving forward with the Manhattan Place name. So that is why Village Creek was somewhat surprised with this bylaw coming forward in its current form, and why, rather than simply saying here, the request that we are making is that council defer its decision on this bylaw and give another opportunity to come back and have dialogue with Village Creek on the name, because we understand that there's an opportunity here, and we do think that there was a broad understanding of the acceptance of the name, and so we'd like to have that further discussion, explore the opportunity to name this Manhattan Place, and to recognize the Indigenous heritage again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Collier. That's my question.
You're welcome. Any other member of council wish to ask any questions at this time? I'll ask a few. Mr. Siriano, your client came to this council, I don't remember the date of the meeting, but we had a fairly lengthy discussion about the request for the name, and this council, I believe, was quite clear on our street naming policy. and that we are not in support of deviating from policy in this case. You recall that meeting, or were you part of that or briefed on that?
Through the chair to you, Your Worship. No, I'm not aware of that. I wasn't involved in that. And again, my involvement with this matter and from my client's perspective is with respect to this bylaw that's now before council.
I can assure you that did happen, and this council was quite clear on our policy with your client. I believe this maybe went to the region as part of standard practice, but you understand the region has a say in naming regional roads, but just because the region doesn't have a problem with the name of this has no bearing whatsoever on this council and our policy.
Again, through the chair, yeah, of course, and it wasn't to suggest that the region somehow has the ability to impose its decision on council. What I think the acknowledgement was that there are no barriers to naming this private lane that had in place. And again, as I mentioned in my deputation, the naming convention to name streets in the town after veterans, a noble policy, is one that has a built-in exception within the bylaw itself, and one where there has been deviation in the past. And again, this is an opportunity, we think, to look at that, particularly on a private site, particularly on such a small land that really only serves 6 houses, and that the people who ultimately the homeowners who live there, to look beyond what has been a very successful policy in Ajax. As I said, again, having reached the milestone of naming it after the last veteran who lost their life in the Battle of River Plate, to look beyond that and to achieve other goals, to achieve other elements of the town, the region, the country's history.
Okay, so I'm very happy that you've taken the time to get familiar with our street naming policy and with a bit of our history at the town. We are very proud of it. But one thing I believe you're maybe not getting about that is it's not just about naming of those that served just in the battle. We have named a lot of our streets on those that served on subsequent versions of the HMS Ajax as well. So the list is not complete. And as of now, I'll try and frame this in a question. I guess, are you aware that we will be revisiting the street naming policy this coming term of council? That will form part of our strat plan. However, as Councillor Lee brought up, we have not yet, and our current plan is what stands. Just yes or no is fine. I have to set it as a question.
Through the chair, I'm not aware that the policy is being renamed, and I'm glad to hear, and I'm glad to hear that important project is being undertaken. Something that has been
reviewed, and we are going to look at the things that you said, but as it is still based on those that served on HMS Ajax, Exeter, and Achilles.
Yes, sir. I do recognize that. Again, the policy itself, though, has in the bylaw does have an exception built in. So there is no, let's say, absolute limitation on council looking at this as an opportunity, especially if we know coming forward that the policy is being reviewed, to look at this as an opportunity to look beyond that naming convention. Again, we are asking that staff and council direct staff to go back, have further discussions. Our client is open and willing to have those discussions with staff. And again, use this as an opportunity to really benefit both the town and the project and the future homeowners. Particularly if this is coming forward anyways, this would be a wonderful test case to look at how can the town look at other elements of its heritage, particularly Indigenous heritage, to be recognized on these sorts of streets going forward.
And we will be doing that. Anyway, just one point I wish to make. You talk about that exception to our bylaw and named a couple of streets that we had decided to change the name, and that is exactly it, change the name. And that's what that applies to. In this case, this has not yet been named. And that policy, I don't believe, would apply. But anyway, thank you very much for your delegation. Does any other member of council have any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much.
It's Mayor Collier, Chair.
Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
See me? Okay, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Soriano, thank you for your delegation presentation. But you have what, 6 houses being built, and this is north of Rossland, correct? Going towards Taunton.
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor Khan. This is six houses. They're townhouses, and it is just on the north side of Rosslyn. That's correct.
Correct. I pass there 2-3 times a day, and you're doing right now. You're still in the construction of house number 1, correct?
I don't have details on the construction stage, but I do understand that it is proceeding. It is in fact proceeding. The development is underway.
You have one house. Sorry to interrupt. It's 3 parts just right now being connected, and you have 5 more. So what I'm trying to say is that you have quite some time more for construction. I don't think you have a timeline when you're going to complete the 6 houses. And as sorry, go ahead.
I would just say again through the chair to Councillor Khan, I don't have information on the timeline. I have to confirm that with my client. It is under construction, and Councillor, you're more familiar with the site as you pass by every day.
I am. And it's beautiful. And what I can tell you, have some time. And I think you should just wait and see what the council comes up with, the new policies. And I'm sure it was heard what your interests are. And it might be taken into consideration with the new policies. But one thing I can say, you do have a lot of time on your hands for this to prolong and maybe get an amicable answer to your questions or something met in the middle. But it's a great looking project, and well, hopefully you get what you want, but let's see what the new strat plan is, okay?
Thank you very much. Again, through the chair to Councillor, and thank you very much, sir. What I will say, just in terms of the timing, I understand that the utility companies do require municipal addresses to proceed with registration. So there is an important timing element to this. Although construction, as you I think very fairly say, is underway and will take some time.
Trust me, you have a lot of time.
Of course, but with that being said, we would like to have the dialogue with staff and the city to continue that to settle on a name that is something that my client is important for them to move forward, particularly as we don't want it to hold up other elements of the construction.
Point taken. Thank you, Mrs. Soriano. Pleasure chatting with you, and hopefully things work out in the favor of the municipality and yourself.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything further by any members of council? Okay, hearing seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Soriano, for your presentation. Moving on.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Chair, would it be appropriate to just move the item up then, so we can just finish it now?
No, I'm going to follow the agenda, Councilor Lee.
Okay.
Moving on to 4.1, reports, CAO 2022-13, 27 Station Street lease agreement. Can I get a mover for this, please?
I'll move it.
Actually, sorry, I lost my place in this. This was the one that I had brought forward. So I'll relinquish the chair to Councillor Crawford. The Deputy Mayor Crawford. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Worship. CAO Baker, would you like to report here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have Sam Patterson here at the meeting who authored the report, and I'd like her to maybe speak to the contents of the report and answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you for the opportunity to present this to council today. We did receive an urgent request from the region of Durham requiring temporary emergency shelter space for the upcoming 2022-2023 winter season. They are seeing an increase in homelessness throughout the pandemic and through the year 2022. In Ajax in September in 2022, there were 39 actively homeless individuals, up from 15 in January of this year. And so Ajax was the first to put their hand up and respond to this urgent request with the possibility of utilizing 27 Station Street, which is the Central Park Sales Pavilion, as a potential site for an emergency shelter. We worked with staff and with the region's social services department to determine the feasibility of that. And from there, we decided that yes, it was a feasible location for a temporary shelter. We're looking at the possibility of housing 25 to 30 individuals in this site. It would connect them with programming that would help them find permanent housing. and are continuing to work with the region to get the building up to their needs for the use of this. All the costs would be associated to the region, and it would be of no cost to the town of Ajax. Happy to answer any questions that you might have about the plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Regional Councillor Dyes.
Thank you. I just want to ensure that there will be some sort of communication strategy in place to let residents know and the local businesses know how this will operate and what the expectations are and, you know, basically who they can call it for information and who they can call if there's an issue.
Through the chair, we are very committed to being transparent and proactive with our communication around the proposed shelter. Communications would include notifying those businesses as well as the area residents, looking at hosting a community information meeting and regular shelter updates to ajax.ca. Of course, we'll be working with the region who are experts in these kinds of operations to develop and action this plan.
And just one other question. Would it be possible for you, please, to connect with CDCD? We did have a conversation with the Homelessness Task Force regarding a special committee that would incorporate residents and business owners, as well as expertise around the table on homelessness. And I think that's very important moving forward. So, because things will change as we move forward, of course. And I think that needs to be in place. So I just want to make sure that you would, if you don't mind, if you would follow up on that, please.
Through the chair, thank you. Yes, I will connect with CDCD and find out where their plans are for that kind of session and meeting group.
Thank you.
Mayor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. And not so much question, Councillor Crawford, I neglected to share with you the resolution, so I don't know if the clerk can put it on the screen with regards to this. But very happy to see this coming forward. This came out of something that was brought up a couple of years ago when I suggested that perhaps the old Lamine Sales Center as a vacant property could be used for some sort of in some way to help our unsheltered population. And I just want to thank staff, thank Ms. Patterson for putting this together and coordinating this with the region to help move this forward. This is a growing issue. Ajax is second in the region as far as our number of unsheltered individuals. It's not getting any better, and we do need to make sure that we do something to protect those vulnerable members of our population during the coming very cold winter months. So just to Councillor Dye's questions, I believe that's in the agreement that I read with regards to disruption of businesses and that type of thing. I hope they were going to work the region very closely with the hub and make sure that that does not happen. I did receive another email about the bus stop just this morning. I think you were copied on that as well. And we will need to make sure, but this is meant to help address those issues and hopefully make them better. I do hope, and we will see where it goes. But happy to move this. Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Dyes was seconded.
Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you, Samantha, for bringing this for the presentation. Thank you to the Mayor for making this suggestion. I also know that Regional Councillor Dyes had made this suggestion prior as well, so I'd like to acknowledge that. And I think I echo what has been said about communications to the community, especially the immediate surrounding business community, that they know what's happening, that they are part of that consultation. So I do have some other questions. So Sam, you had said the timeline would be in time for this winter. Do you have any other details about that, like what would actually be happening from now until opening?
Through the chair, the region's winter warming season begins on November 15th. Some upgrades do need to happen to the building, and once the lease agreement is in place, the region is prepared to begin their work to get the shelter space ready.
Okay.
But there is still some work to be done. They are very motivated to see that done quickly.
Perfect. That's great. And in the report, it mentions the expectation to shelter the Ajax unsheltered population first, or as a priority. So I don't know if you can speak to that, but do you have any information on how that would be addressed?
Through the chair, yes, individuals who are currently living unsheltered in Ajax are being prioritized. The region is planning to work with local service providers like the Ajax Hub, street outreach teams to identify who these individuals might be. I'd also like to share that all of the region's shelters are housing focused. So that means that all their clients are working on a housing plan. The region does find that keeping individuals in their home community works much better because it makes their search for housing easier. So it is their priority there as well to keep people within their community.
Wonderful, thank you. And this is meant to be, I guess, a temporary shelter until I guess development opportunities come to that area, and then what would happen?
Through the chair, yes, we've been very transparent with the region that it is a temporary site should the need arise for the town to end the agreement or the region to end the agreement as well. The region is responsible for transitioning those clients. And should the town need the land but not the building, we are also open to the possibility of the region locating the structure. We've been told that that is a possibility onto another appropriate vacant site.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. And in the report, it said that only Ajax and Whitby put forth recommendations. So do you know if the recommendation in Whitby will also be moving forward in this way?
I don't have any information on that at this time. The region has informed me that Whitby was looking into possibilities as well. I can get that answer for you and send it by email.
Okay, great. Just for my own curiosity, I think it would be interesting to see what happens there. And then just my final question was about all costs will be covered by the region. I'm guessing except for, you mentioned in the report, that the landlord and tenant would each require its own insurance. So is that will be at the cost of the town, or will that also be covered by the region?
Through the chair, I don't have information on how our current insurance policies might cover that. I might have to find an answer for that and get back to you again.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. This is a great opportunity for us. I'm very happy to see Ajax take action to help those who need help. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great job, Sam. I know the mayor is probably really pleased with this. The mayor's gala has really focused on the unsheltered, and somewhere, we can direct the resources into. Sam, one thing I was thinking when I saw this report was, with your networking background, what an opportunity to use this in, with the other partners that we have to, to have the unsheltered, and I got to use my words carefully, integrate with the rest of society, something like what Pat Bailey Square did. They had those cut pricing for rent just to get people off the streets and into with everyone else, just to integrate with society. And I would really like if you found an opportunity to have programs, because it's in the hub of the business area there, right? And you will be talking to businesses, something you can add into it that can really focus the unsheltered, those who want to, really integrate with society. So I don't know if that's making sense, but it's an opportunity I find for Ajax to do something like that. I don't know, do you think something could be worked into that area? It will help remove a lot of stigma as well that we have for the unsheltered. So
through the chair, thank you for that. I'll take that note.
Yeah, and the second thing that when I read that, I remember the last storm, what happened, how that building got destroyed, and I read that the region will look into that. So when do you think all the construction and reinforcement will be completed, that it's safe for the residents?
Through the chair, I can't say how long the construction work will take. I do know that the region is motivated to see it completed quickly.
Okay, so there's no timeline on it. Okay, well, anyways, great job all around, and I know the mayor's gal will have a new direction to go and focus on. It really works within the favor of the vision of the councillors in the town of Ajax. Thank you for your great work, Samantha.
Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to staff for putting this together. Samantha, thank you very much. I just kind of want to point out, ultimately, this is just kind of like a first step, or one of many first steps in terms of addressing the unsheltered population. This is by no means like I just want to remind residents, because we had that incident that happened earlier this summer, and there was a lot of accusations like, oh, why can't we just solve this problem? And the fact of the matter is, homelessness is the unsheltered population, is a very nuanced issue that's been occurring for centuries. And there's no so much solving the problem as it is just as a municipality continuing to address these symptoms of the problem slowly and with these kind of resources. So I just want to say I'm incredibly proud of this step that we're taking. It's by no means a catch-all. It by no means we will not see the unsheltered population throughout the town, but it just means it's a good way of preserving their dignity, and just it's a way the municipality can help. So I'm very proud of our council for hopefully supporting this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just thank you to Ms. Patterson, to all of our staff as well, and the regional staff for working on this so diligently and so quickly. As you know, it's a perfect placement for this, because we need a shelter that's close to the programs that can support them. So they are supported by many, such as the Salvation Army Church, Community Services, Community Development Council Durham, CARIA, the Christian Faith Outreach Center, the library, and also the lockers that have been in place for them to use. So there are many. We have the outreach workers too that work on the street and go and talk to people and see what their needs are. So there are many people who are working on the homelessness issue. And this is across Canada. This is not just here in Durham region, but we happen to have the second highest number of homelessness people here in Ajax. So this is a great opportunity to house them as the cold weather is coming, to make sure they don't freeze to death on the streets, and to get them the programs that they need to help them succeed. We are now starting to see, with the increase in the cost of living, that there are many evictions also coming forward that is increasing the number of homeless. So these are people that don't choose to be homeless, but find themselves in a very difficult situation, and we can help them come out of that. We're seeing more families as well. So I'm really very pleased that we found a place. This is not a solution, as Regional Councillor Lee spoke to. We need housing. So that is the next thing, is how we're going to provide housing for people, even the working poor, who can't afford, to rent an apartment. These are real challenges that we face, and we're working on it. And we've made some headway here. It's not as quick as we'd like, but we've made some great headway. So a huge thank you to all of the not-for-profit organizations, especially CFOC and CARIA across the street, and to our staff. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Rob Tyler-Morin.
Thank you, Chair and Deputy Mayor, and thank you for all your work on this, Samantha, and everyone else. I know Mayor Collier and Joanne and Lisa have been trying to get this kind of project up and running. Question to Samantha: can you please let us know, please, when occupancy happens? I know you don't know today, but if you could shoot us an email or just let us know, because I know from our residents, they're going to be saying, when is this opening? When is it happening? And any other information, I'm sure you would have anyways, but just formally asking if you can let us know when it opens, please and thank you.
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. Very happy to let council know, and of course, through our communications plan that we'll be building the broader community as well.
Perfect. The work continues on this. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, I do have a question. Is everyone done? My question is around, and maybe this is unfair to you, Ms. Patterson. I'm hoping that the DRPS has been part of the partnership in this. When, you know, it's one thing when the unsheltered or not are on the street, but then it's a completely different process when they are enclosed in a building. They had concerns around the locker that we put up. And so I'm just hoping that there is conversations with our DRPS around this actually happening and what they can and cannot do.
Through the chair, we are in the process of finalizing our security measures with the region, and yes, are in consultation with Durham Region Police, CFOC, who will be operating or who are in discussions to operate the new shelter space, have an existing and strong relationship with the Durham Police, and expect that would continue as well.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you very much. I also want to echo thanks to Councillor Bauer and Regional Councillor Dyes for really bringing this to our attention early in the last term, and also the support from the Mayor's Gala on all of the, you know, the external kind of organizations being able to support them through the Mayor's Gala. So, you know, it's great to see this happen. And it certainly is more than needed, as everyone has said. So we have a resolution on the floor here. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's moved by Mayor Collier and seconded by Regional Councillor Dyes. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. If there's no other further questions, all in favor, Mayor Collier, did you want to close?
No, that's fine. I just, again, want to thank staff for putting all this together. They really did all the hard work and heavy lifting on this, and I'm looking forward to this project moving ahead.
Regional Councillor Dyes, I saw your name. Were you just going to say all in favor? Yeah, okay. All in favor? Okay, awesome. That passes. Thank you so much. And back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Crawford. I'm going to turn the chair over to that completes business arising. Moving on to business arising from notice of motion. The amendment to the Code of Conduct is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Crawford. So I'm going to turn the chair over to Regional Councillor Lee.
Who is muted?
Who is muted?
You're muted.
Couldn't hear a word I said. Thank goodness. All right. So apologies. So, so Mayor Collier, did you want to kind of read the therefores and go from there?
I'll bring it up. I'm not going to read the whole thing.
You got it? Okay.
Crawford, that the Code of Conduct be amended as follows. 1, Section 4.1.7, adding the word or disparage. Sections 5.4.1, adding the section or another member of council. Section 5.4.2, adding or council. Section 6.4, adding the word socioeconomic status. Section 8.6.1, again, same as the before, or disparage other members. 6, Section 8.6.2, again, adding socioeconomic status. And Section 8.7, speaking to private social media accounts, member behavior must still conform to the council code of conduct, even while using unofficial or personal social media accounts. And finally, 11.6, adding other council members. I'd just like to speak to it quickly, Chair.
Sure. After you.
This past term, it became very apparent to me that we needed a bit of strengthening to the council code of conduct with respect to social media. It speaks very clearly to council with regards to staff and how we interact with staff, but it doesn't speak really at all to how we interact with each other. And just adding words like or disparage and conforming to the code of conduct, even when you're acting personally through your personal social media, you still have to maintain that level of professionalism that the office requires. You are still representing the town of Ajax, whether you are representing it on your personal or through your official channels. That's not how people see it. If I go out and speak on my personal, people still look at me as the mayor. And I just wanted to make sure that we added that to the council code of conduct as we start this next term of council. So we start off fresh, when we start off bringing things up to speed where they should be. I did bring this forward with conjunction with consultation with the clerk, and this has gone through and we sat down and went through this together. And I'm comfortable that just making these small tweaks to what is already a very strong and one of the strongest codes in the region of Durham. I know that when the region of Durham did their own, they looked very much at our code of conduct and mirrored it during the region's code of conduct. So I think just by making these minor changes, that will strengthen it up. So I would ask for your support on this. Thank you, Chair.
Regional Councilor Crawford is the second. Do you have anything to speak on this?
No, I do not.
Do you have any members of council have any questions or comments? Councilor Eric Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, if these conducts are broken, because we didn't experience that in our term, what are the repercussions for this?
I think we'll turn that question to the clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair, the penalties available under the Act are a reprimand or a suspension of pay up to 90 days. And as you may recall, during the last round of Code of Conduct updates, the authority to apply a penalty was delegated to the Integrity Commissioner. So the Integrity Commissioner would determine which penalty is appropriate in the circumstances.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other members of council? Seeing none, I'd just like to speak on this quickly.
Councilor Lee, I see Councilor Dye's hand.
Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. My screen was blocking. Councilor Dyes, after you, please.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I think we're living in some very different times now, and social media is a big part of that. And I think we forget, and this is a reminder, that people need to be respectful of each other in many different ways. And I think it sends a message out there to the public as well that will protect our staff and protect some of our volunteers, particularly on advisory committees, that this also extends to them. So in these changing times, you know, I think we have to speak out that what is happening out there is really not acceptable. And we have to start showing that we are going to abide by those rules as well. So for that reason, I will support this.
Councilor Tyler Moore.
Thank you. I'm glad to see this come forward, especially when I read other council members. I don't think that staff should be held to a code that we aren't held to as well. I think, you know, in many ways we're staff. So if they've, you know, it shouldn't be something that we have to grind, but like just us being members of council, being members of staff in a way. So I'm glad to see this come forward, and I'm glad that those specifics were added. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of council? So I just want to quickly comment of, I understand the intent behind this, and I would argue this past election, we saw a lot of vitriol towards incumbents and staff, and it is absolutely unacceptable. I guess my concern lies with, what if I tweet a joke that is interpreted as being towards another member of council? What if I tweet a meme? And by the way, I don't do this anymore. I generally stay away from social media, but just like the question does beg of, the nuances of social media and the way we communicate, in a sense, like there is a free speech element to this. That said, I think I ultimately will support this without kind of any reservations, because ultimately, as council members, we can always amend this if needed. And so I'm very willing to be, you know, part of the test pilot to test these current parameters. I am concerned, ultimately, you know, I just want to state the concerns for the record now, that there is a very strict element to this that, you know, like if I have a private conversation with another member of council about a third member of council due to frustrations, due to being human beings, and we all do this, right? And that conversation was also being recorded for some reason, then that can be used to give to the Integrity Commissioner, because there's no policy here regarding a private conversation that I can read. And maybe I read this wrong, incorrectly, and I've given this some thought. So again, I guess we'll cross that bridge when it comes. It's always within our power to change this if need be. I just, looking at this, do view that it does infringe on some personal privacy concerns. But ultimately, I'd like to see how this goes for now. So would any of the members like of council like to speak before calling the vote? I believe Mayor Collier, did you want Mayor Collier?
Just recorded vote, please, Chair.
Recorded vote has been requested to the clerk then.
Thank you. On the motion, in favor or opposed, Councillor Tyler Morin,
In favor.
Councillor Bauer,
In favor?
Mayor Collier,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Crawford,
In favor.
Regional Councillor Dyes,
In favor?
Councillor Khan,
In favor.
and Chair Lee.
In favor.
Thank you.
I think you want to give the chair back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. And now handing back the chair to Mayor Collier.
Thank you. Just moving on, that concludes notice of motion. Moving on to bylaws. Councillor Lee, you wanted to ask a question to bylaw 65-2022.
That is correct. Through the chair to staff.
Sorry, 66-2022.
That's right, 66. Through the chair to staff then, there seems to be like a miscommunication where like, I believe we sent this to the region and the region sent it back with no complaints. Is there not a middle step then where then like the town of Ajax can go back and say, well, but it doesn't comply with our like bylaws?
Through the chair, I can speak to that. Regional Councillor Lee, what happened was after the developer provided a legal opinion on our private bylaw, or sorry, on our street naming bylaw, we seeked a legal opinion as well, which agreed. So as a result of that, we took it to the next step to see if the region had any issues with that name. So that's what we were doing there. However, as per section 48 of the Municipal Act, council still has the ability to pass a bylaw.
Right. Okay. That is a very important distinction. I understand, like I said, like, I brought this up back during the Langsdorff debate where it's like, I thought the bylaw was antiquated and needed updating. But at the same time, though, I'm also willing to wait for the bylaw for that discussion to happen. And I think right now, the applicant in this case seems to be trying to circumvent the existing bylaw through various claims, and I don't think it lines up to where we are. So I'm happy to support this update of the bylaw to include private roads. I think we might as well be, there should be some conformity in the way we name our streets, no matter if they're private or public or regional. And so I fully support that. So thank you, staff, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anything further on the bylaws? Councillor Dyes.
Thank you. To Mr. Simpson, I seem to remember in a package of correspondence on a council meeting that we were advised that we had no jurisdiction with the current bylaw to name the street on a private laneway. Is that correct?
Did the chair to Regional Councillor Dyes? Yes, that is correct. With our current bylaw, we cannot. It just refers to public streets. However, under section 48 of the Municipal Act, the council can pass a bylaw to name a private road or a private lane. So that's exactly what this bylaw is doing. And under the Municipal Act, all it requires is that notice is given of council's intention to pass the bylaw. So that's why we're here today.
Thank you for clarifying that. So when it's the appropriate time, I'd like to speak to the motion. Thank you.
I believe now is the appropriate time.
Thank you. We've done a really good job in the town of Ajax in our jurisdiction, which is public roads, which we own and maintain. And we've done the street naming on those roads. Here's a private road in a development with only 6 homes, and where, there is some other history here where the Rondos are part of the Métis, and they would like to, include their history on the street naming of this road. And that's not something we're opposed to, because as was stated earlier, we have agreed to this. There is other history that comes by that we must recognize as people are a part of this community, and they have been a part of Métis for many, many decades in this community, particularly on our creeks, which is where they lived and fished. They had a home life here, and I think also that should be something that we acknowledge. This is not a major road. Like I say, it's not a public street. It is a private development, and it should be up to, the family should have a right to name that street as they wish. And I think it's very fitting that the history be acknowledged in this, particularly next to Duffins. I think that's very fitting. So I'm afraid I'm not going to support this bylaw. I understand what you are saying. We can't control everything. I think on private jurisdiction, that's a different, or on public jurisdiction, that's a different thing. And we will still keep the history of our town, and we still do the street naming process. But I think in this case, I think that the street naming should be part of what the family has decided upon.
Anything further? Councillor Crawford?
I'm curious, this can't be the only private road that has ever been named in Ajax. What have we done in the past?
Mr. Simpson, are you able to answer that?
Yes, through the chair. In the past, we've always just followed our existing bylaw, and we've kept that same protocol. We weren't aware that we didn't have that authority, and that's why we always just used that same protocol. This is the first time we've ever actually ran into an issue or been challenged, I guess you could say.
So every developer that's developed on a private road has just followed our bylaw.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mayor Collier. So I'm sorry, Mr. Simpson, can you explain to me, and I know you already have, but could you just explain it to me again? What happened? Why was this forwarded to the region in the first place?
Through the chair to Councillor Bauer. So after we received our legal opinion stating that we don't have the authority to name a private road unless we pass a bylaw like this, we just went to the next step to see if that name would be approved at the regional level. Because if we were going to proceed with that name, it still has to be approved at the regional level. And that's what was done. Staff then took to the next step to inform council of what the options are and what the name would be if we were proceeding with that name. And that's when council expressed interest to proceed with these next steps. So that's why we're here today.
Okay, so in the presentation earlier, when Mr. Soriano had said that the town had accepted it by sending it to the region, that is not accurate, correct?
The town didn't accept, the region accepted it. However, it's still up to council if they want to explore their power under the Municipal Act, and council did decide to do that.
For sure, absolutely. And does staff have an opinion on this?
Personally, no.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Just asking.
That's not a fair question, does it?
Yes, thank you. I apologize if I caused any discomfort. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
I don't see any other hands. I'm going to deal with these two matters separately since it doesn't appear. So let's do the Code of Conduct bylaw first. Moved by, since I don't have someone, can I see a hand? Moved and seconded, moved by Councillor Lee, seconded by Councillor Bauer. That the amendment to the Code of Conduct bylaw be approved. Those in favor? I should see all hands. It was unanimous. That's carried. And then separately, bylaw 66-2022, bylaw to name a private road. My original I had, can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Lee, you said you would move it. Seconder?
Yep.
Tyler Moore. I don't know if we need a recordable. Let's see hands. Those in favor of the bylaw? 1, 2, 3, 4, everybody. Except for those opposed. Councillor Dice. Okay, that's a 6-1. Thank you. Moving along to the confirming bylaw. I have moved by Councillor Tyler Moore and second by Councillor Khan. So let me pull it up here. That bylaw number 67-2022 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the Corporation Town of Ajax at a special meeting held on November 8th, 2022 be read a first, second, third time and passed. Those in favor of the confirming bylaw? Let me see your hands. Any opposed? None opposed. That's carried. And finally, moved by Councillor Khan, second by Councillor Guys, that the November 8th, 2022 special meeting of the Council of the Town of Ajax be adjourned. Those in favor? None opposed. That's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, staff. Enjoy the rest of your day.